You are listening to the So Now What podcast with Lana Manikowski, episode number 198.
So now what? These three words raced through my mind time and time again during my journey through fertility treatments. I tried desperately to have a child, but never was able. I yearned for a community to join that could understand my struggles. I couldn't find one, so I created one with the So Now What podcast. I love that you found us.
Hello, and welcome back to the So Now What podcast. If you are somewhere in the U.S., I hope that you are warm and made it through this polar vortex and this unexpected snow that so many of us across the U.S. have experienced. Although where I live in Chicago, we are no strangers to this type of weather, but I know so many places were hit that aren't, used to the freeze and the snow and all the stuff. And that was sort of what was an impetus for me to record this podcast episode today, because across the states, there have been school closings and, work from home because the frigid temps and people not being able to navigate to their workplace, which oftentimes gives you more time to look at yourself, to look at your life, to be slowed down some from the hustle and bustle. And it was what inspired me to talk about a grief plateau. And that is something that you might not be familiar with, you might not have heard before, but I was in a grief plateau for a very long time. I would say probably about 3 years from the time that I got the news that my only frozen embryo was not viable for implantation. It had chromosomal abnormalities. That is when I found out that my journey to biological parenthood was ending. So you know the story. But all that to say, around with the COVID-19 pandemic was 2020, and life was slowing down, and I was used to being involved in my work and escaping my life through keeping myself busy through work, because that was something that made me feel very important and something I was very successful at and something that I really clung to when I got that news from my clinic. And I was in something called a grief plateau. And I think this slowing down that we've been seeing these last couple days, last couple weeks, depending on when you're listening to this, might have you recognizing that you might be in one too. So let's get into this week, because if you are thinking, I know something feels off and I just can't put my finger on it, there has been this thing that happened since you left fertility treatments without a baby, and life didn't necessarily totally fall apart, but it also hasn't come back together either. Things just got really quiet. Not like this loud grief, not this crying all day, not your inability to get out of bed, but just feeling like you are not yourself and you don't know how to put a finger on it. And no one really talks about this part. So, this is what we're going to get into today, talking about a grief plateau. It is a term that I learned about when I was going through and getting my advanced training in grief and post-traumatic growth, which we talked about post-traumatic growth back, I think, at episode 196. But it is a way that many women feel when they leave this journey without a baby, or when the baby never comes and this life that you expected did not turn into the life that you were living. And life feels probably like it's on pause and the play button isn't somewhere that you can find, and it makes you maybe feel stuck. So when fertility treatments end, people just think things are automatically going to get better. But what really happened? Like, everything went into this complete stop, like full stop. No longer getting the calls from the clinics, no longer having a next protocol to start, no longer in this weight of, am I going to become a mom? And in this finality of things. So from the outside, it looks like, you know, the hard part is over on paper. The navigating of fertility treatments is over. And people around you who know that it's over maybe think that, you should have this sense of relief. And maybe you feel like there should be this sense of relief, but that is not how it feels inside. You are likely standing in this space where your future used to be, and no one is telling you what to do next. So, a grief plateau is not about falling apart. You're not this hot mess. You're not unable to function. You are showing up in your life. You're going to work, going maybe to workouts. You're, socializing, maybe not in the same way that you were before, but like you are functioning in your life. You are not clinically depressed where you can't get out of bed and do the things that you used to be able to do. But yes, things feel like they are missing. So it feels like life keeps moving, but you are sort of watching it instead of living inside of it. You're still doing your thing, still trying to move ahead, but just not feeling fully alive in this. And I just want you to know that a grief plateau does not mean that you are doing something wrong. It doesn't mean that you are bad at healing. It means that your body and brain learned how to survive something likely for a very long amount of time during your treatments that was really hard. You have navigated years of hope, years of getting news that you didn't expect, hormone fluctuations, test results, waiting of like unknown amounts of time. And for some people, an extraordinary amount of loss. And that wears you down. So your system, your nervous system does the best thing it can. It shuts things down for you, not because you're weak, not because you're tired. This is how grief often shows up. You may stay busy because slowing down and having time to experience the sadness and the grief and the disappointment that you're feeling does not feel comfortable. So maybe you're scrolling on social media. Maybe you're over planning, over committing, overworking, overeating, over snacking, and that helps you keep going. Because being still might mean you're experiencing these things that have not been comfortable for you. You stop dreaming, not because you don't want more, but because wanting hurt too much. Your body is like trying to protect you. Your brain is trying to protect you because that sense of desire that you had throughout this treatment journey has not turned into the desire that you had. So that hope doesn't feel like a safe place for you to go because your brain's telling you like, hold up, let's not want so much again. So instead you feel numb and not sad all the time, but just kind of like meh, like that flatness. And maybe it is protection. So if you don't get too hopeful about things, if you don't have these strong desires, then your body is telling you, your brain is telling you that you won't get hurt. You won't get disappointed. So you're doing things that, check a box and you get things done, but you don't really enjoy doing them. And yeah, you're laughing and able to have a sense of humor, but it doesn't stick with you like it used to. The happiness and the laughter seems to fade a little bit faster. And maybe the joys that you're experiencing don't feel as joyful as they used to. And so the plan you had disappeared, right? And nobody has given you a new one. So purpose feels really confusing to you because when motherhood in your mind was supposed to shape your life, losing that dream, losing that sense of purpose you thought would be attached to motherhood makes everything else feel unclear. And so deep down, there is this quiet thought that you might not know how to verbalize and you might not have ever said aloud, but maybe you're feeling like, maybe my best days are behind me. So if that sounds familiar, just stop for a moment and recognize and even pause right now. And if you're near a mirror, tell yourself, I love you. We are going to get through this. Because what happens when you don't hear those things and when you aren't given a plan for how to start again and where to start again on this roadmap that does not exist, that no one gave you. Something big ends and no one is there to help you rebuild it. So you don't just lose this chance to have a baby. You lost a future that you planned your life around. And this time seems to have like gone away, right? It's like you lived in this vacuum. Your investment and this huge chunk of money that you spent on treatments, maybe medications, maybe like me, I went to a remote clinic. So money in travel and hotels and all these things that I attributed to this outcome that didn't happen. Maybe your body doesn't look like it used to, and you feel like you spent all this money on this body that didn't produce for you. And maybe you've lost hope in, am I a good decision maker? Because that loss wasn't named or supported. And there was no moment that somebody said, like, this matters. The things that you did, even if they didn't result in the outcome that you thought, matters. So the grief just sticks around and you just are doing your best to live with it and live around it. And you adjust to having this feeling of, this is just what life is like when you don't have kids. And that's why it feels like a plateau. It's not that you're falling apart, but you're also not moving forward either. And without a name for this, oftentimes I see when women come to work with me in my coaching program, they're blaming themselves, right? You like don't know who to blame. So you tell yourself you're doing something wrong, that you should be over it. You judge yourself for why you feel this way. And you try to be grateful. You try to set these big goals. You try to push yourself to feel excited again. And when that doesn't work, shame starts to sneak in. And what you don't see is that your brain is just doing what it learned to do, that hoping led to pain. And then it's like, hey, I don't want to do all these things. That is what it learned. So if you are in a grief plateau, if this sounds familiar and you identify with what I am saying, I just want you to know you're not doing grief wrong. Your grief just never had a place to go. It didn't know that it was allowed to do these things. And agreeing with the fact that you might be in a grief plateau does not mean that you are stuck forever. It is about understanding that this is where you are now, because you can't move forward when you don't know where you're standing. So in upcoming episodes, we are going to talk about what helps women move out of this place. Not forcing yourself to be happy, not toxic positivity, not pretending what you went through didn't hurt, not rushing into a new life that you are not ready for. Just slow steps, safe steps, like recreating the safety with yourself is so important. So today, I just want you to know that there is a term, if you feel like it's helpful, that you can name what you are experiencing and what you have gone through. And I just wanted to give you those words and let you know that you're not alone if life feels paused right now. And hopefully, this episode helps you feel seen, hopefully, allows you to take a breath and know that you don't need to change anything today. Just understanding what you are going through is enough for now. So I love you. I hope you have a beautiful week. And remember that it's never too late to discover your meaning. I'll talk to you next week. Hey, real quick, I just wanted to tell you about an awesome resource I created. If you have ever found yourself in conversations with people, or maybe people offering you suggestions about what you should do to become a mom, it's called The Top 27 Things People Say When You're Childless and How to Respond. You can get your copy free at lanamanikowski.com/things people say.